The late afternoon sun burned down on the dusty main street of Willow Creek, turning every board, every nail, every patch of dirt into glowing amber. It was 1882, and the Arizona frontier breathed heat and danger in equal measure. Dust devils twisted through the empty street while townsfolk gathered in a tight crowd around a makeshift wooden platform. Samuel Hayes stood at the edge of that restless crowd. His hat brim cast a shadow over steel-gray eyes that had seen too much death and disappointment in 35 years. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the quiet kind of man whose presence made others think twice before crossing him. His face was weathered, marked with lines carved by sun and solitude, but it gave away nothing of the storm building inside him. On the platform stood the reason for the crowd's buzz. A girl, no, a young woman, chained at the wrists. She looked no older than 23, yet her eyes carried the wildfire of someone who had fought life itself and refused to bow. Her tangled auburn hair caught the last of the day's light like copper wire. A torn dress hung off her bruised body, and blood still darkened the corner of her mouth. But she stood tall, chin raised, gaze burning through the crowd as if daring anyone to step closer. "Gentlemen," called Josiah Pritchard, the oily auctioneer, raising his gavel, "what we have here is no ordinary prisoner. This here's a genuine wild creature found living like an animal in the canyons, stealing from decent folk, fighting like a demon when cornered. Took 6 deputies to drag her in." Laughter rippled through the men. Women in calico whispered behind gloved hands, scandalized yet unwilling to look away. Someone called out, "What's her name?" "Elena," Pritchard replied. "Or so she says. Talks when she pleases. Fights like 10 men when she's riled. The county's washing its hands of her. Whoever takes her on does so at his own risk." At that, Elena turned her face toward the crowd. Her amber eyes searched hard and fearless until they locked with Samuel's. For a moment it was as though the whole noisy square went silent. Something sparked between them. Recognition, challenge, or fate itself. Samuel couldn't name it, but he couldn't look away. "She ain't no horse." Elena suddenly snapped, her voice cutting sharp as a whip. "And I'll kill any man who tries to break me." The crowd gasped, half shocked, half thrilled. Some laughed, others shook their heads. Samuel saw Bull Morrison, a bloated rancher red from too much whiskey, push forward with greedy eyes. $40. Bull bellowed, "She'll fit fine at my place." Alongside my spirited fillies, Elena spat at his boots. One of the deputies struck her hard across the face. She stumbled but did not fall. "Easy now, easy," Pritchard said, though his grin betrayed his enjoyment. "Do I hear 45?" Samuel's hand tightened into a fist. He hadn't come for this. He needed flour, tools, salt blocks, nothing more. But something in him, something he thought long buried, would not let him turn away. He stepped forward, boots heavy on the wooden boards. 100, he said. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried through the hush that followed. Gasps ran through the crowd. Even Pritchard's eyes bulged. "Mr. Hayes. Surely you don't mean cash?" Samuel pulled a leather pouch from his coat. "And this here," Bull Morrison's face turned purple. "Now hold on, Hayes." Samuel turned his gray eyes on the man. "Unless you're prepared to bid higher, she's mine." His hand hovered near his Colt. 45, the weight of his reputation hung heavy. Bull glared, but his courage shrank back into his boots. "She's all yours." Bull spat. "But no man alive will tame her." Pritchard snatched the money, already counting with greedy fingers. A voice from the crowd cheered. "What are you planning to do with her, Hayes? Your ranch ain't no place for a woman." Samuel looked back only once. "What I do on my land is my business." Then he turned to the deputy. "Unlock her." "You sure, Hayes?" "She'll bolt first chance she gets." "Unlock her." The chains clattered to the boards. Elena rubbed her raw wrists but never looked away from Samuel. She stood still, shoulders square like a wolf deciding whether to bite or flee. "You bought nothing," she told him coldly. "I am no man's property." Never said you were, Samuel replied. But the law says different. And right now, getting you away from this lot seems the best of bad choices. You come peaceful or I leave you to them. Elena's jaw tightened. Her pride fought with survival, but in the end, she gave a sharp nod. I'll come. But I won't kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone. Never asked you to. The crowd parted grudgingly as Samuel led her off the platform. Their whispers followed like buzzing flies. Speculation, pity, envy. Elena walked beside him, not behind, her head high, even without the chains. At his wagon, Samuel paused. Can you ride? Better than any man here. She shot back. Good. There's a mare tied behind. She's yours. The surprise flickered across her face, but she said nothing, mounting with ease. An old woman called out as they turned to leave. You're making a mistake, Samuel Hayes. That wildness can't be loved out of a person. Samuel swung onto his black gelding. Redemption. Not trying to love it out, he said loud enough for the crowd. Maybe it doesn't need to come out at all. The sun dipped as they rode away, sky painted in fire and blood. Their shadows stretched long across the dusty road. Two figures bound together by chance, heading into an uncertain future. Elena kept silent, her back straight, her eyes on the horizon. Samuel didn't press. He'd bought her freedom, not her trust. Some things couldn't be bought at any price. The desert night closed around them. Coyotes calling under the rising moon. Samuel led them toward a small grove of cottonwoods and a spring he knew well. When he dismounted to build a fire, he turned his back to her without hesitation. This ground's safe, he said. Water's clean. We'll rest here tonight, and if I keep riding, she challenged your choice. But push that mare too hard, and you'll both end up buzzard feed. He bent to gather wood, giving her the chance to run if she wished. But when the fire crackled to life, he heard her dismount at last. Just for tonight, she muttered. Samuel nodded once, feeding the flames. He did not smile, but inside something long dormant stirred. The wild girl no man could tame was riding beside him now, and he couldn't shake the feeling that fate had just set the course of his life. The days that followed their arrival at Triple Creek Ranch carried a strange weight, as if every soul there waited to see what would happen with the new woman in their midst. Elena moved through the place like a restless spirit, watching everything, saying little and trusting no one. Yet she worked. She rose before dawn and followed Tom to the corral, her sharp eyes never missing a detail. She hauled water, gathered firewood, and learned the rhythm of ranch life as if determined to prove she was no burden. Samuel watched her without interfering. He knew better than to crowd a wild creature. He gave her space, but his steady presence never wavered. Sometimes she caught him watching and met his gaze fierce as ever, daring him to judge her. But his eyes only held quiet patience. At first the ranch hands kept their distance. Billy, the youngest, stared at her with open fascination until Tom cuffed him on the back of the head and muttered that staring at rattlesnakes was safer. Miguel, older and wiser, treated Elena with gentle respect, offering help when needed, but never forcing it. Slowly, she began to soften toward him, asking questions about horses or the land. One evening, Samuel found her standing by the corral, her hand resting on the neck of a nervous Mustang. The horse, usually skittish, stood calm under her touch. Samuel leaned on the fence. You've got away with them, he said. Elena's jaw tightened. They're honest. They don't lie. They fear or they trust. Nothing in between. Samuel nodded. Wish people were that simple. Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp as an arrow. People always want something. That's why I survived alone. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over, unlatched the corral gate, and let the Mustang step free. Lena's eyes widened, certain he had lost his mind, but the horse merely circled once and settled near the others. Sometimes, Samuel said quietly, what you expect isn't what you get. That night, as the men gathered for supper, Elena surprised everyone by taking a seat at the table. She ate in silence, but she stayed. And that simple act spoke louder than words. The first true test came with a storm. The sky turned black at midday. Wind howling across the valley as sand and grit battered the ranch. The men scrambled to secure the animals and Elena was swept into the chaos. She followed Tom into the open pasture, her eyes stinging, her lungs choking on dust. When the storm hit full force, she broke away, disoriented, stumbling blindly toward what she thought was shelter. By the time Samuel found her, she was crouched against a rock, arms wrapped around herself, her face strewn with sand and tears. He pulled her to her feet, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. "You'll kill yourself running like that," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "I didn't ask you to come," she snapped through chattering teeth. "You didn't have to," he replied. "We look out for each other here." Back at the ranch, Tom scolded her harshly. But Samuel only tended her sandburned skin with gentle hands. Elena didn't fight him. For once, she sat still, staring into the fire with haunted eyes. "I thought I knew the land," she whispered. "Turns out I don't know anything." "You know how to survive alone," Samuel said softly. "Now you're learning how to survive with others. That's harder." The words sank deep, though she said nothing. The breakthrough came days later in the corral. Billy struggled to break a young Mustang, pulling too hard, shouting too much. Elena climbed the fence, then dropped lightly into the pen. "You're scaring him," she said. Billy bristled, but she ignored him. Moving slowly, she approached the horse, her voice low and steady. Within minutes, the Mustang stood calm, trembling, but no longer wilted. She stroked its neck, whispering something no one else could hear. Samuel, watching from the barn, felt something shift. Elena had shown the truth of herself, not an untamable creature, but someone who understood the language of fear better than most. From that day, she began to change. She worked harder than anyone, blistering her hands, burning meals, and laughing bitterly at her own mistakes. Yet she tried again and again, refusing to quit. Tom grew to respect her. Miguel taught her to cook without setting the kitchen on fire. Even Billy, humbled by her skill with horses, began to treat her like a sister. One night, as Samuel carried water to the porch, he heard her voice. She was speaking to the coyotes howling in the distance, a soft, mournful sound, almost like a song. When she noticed him listening, she stiffened, defensive. "They understand me," she said. "So do I," Samuel answered quietly. Her eyes widened, searching his face for the mockery she expected. But she found only truth. And for the first time, Elena looked at Samuel Hayes, not as the man who bought her, but as the man who might just see her for who she truly was. The fragile peace shattered when riders thundered into the yard before dawn. 15 men, torches burning, led by Jake Morrison, brother of Bull Morrison, and twice as cruel Hayes. Jake called, dismounting with a sneer. "Word is you're keeping something that don't belong to you." The men spread out, their laughter harsh in the night air. Samuel stepped onto the porch, his hand on his Colt. "Everything on this land is mine." Bought and paid for. Jake's grin widened. "Not her. That wild girl made my brother a fool in front of the whole town. She's Morrison property by right." Quote. Before Samuel could reply, Elena stepped forward, knife flashing in her hand, her voice rang like steel. "I won't be anyone's prize. You'll have to kill me first." The yard went silent. Jake's men chuckled but uneasily. Then Samuel's voice cut through the night, steady and deadly calm. "She's not yours. She's not mine. She's her own. But while she works this ranch, she's under my protection. You come for her, you come through me." Tom stepped beside him, rifle raised. Miguel appeared with his old buffalo gun. Billy, his hands shaking, leveled his rifle, too. Elena stood with her knife, her eyes fierce. 5 against 15. The night held its breath. Jake's smirk faltered as he weighed his odds. At last, he spat in the dirt. This ain't over. That wild thing will bring you all down. Get off my land, Samuel said. One by one, the riders turned, their torches vanishing into the darkness. But the promise in Jake Morrison's eyes lingered like poison. When the dust settled, Elena collapsed onto the porch steps, shaking. Samuel sat beside her. Careful not to touch you. All right, he asked. I should leave, she whispered. They'll come back. People will die because of me. Samuel shook his head. They'll come back because Jake Morrison is a coward who hides behind mobs. That's not on you. The others stood silent, waiting for his word. Samuel rose and faced them all. Well, prepare. If they come again, we'll be ready. Then he looked at Elena, his voice quiet. But certain you're not alone anymore. Not unless you choose to be. Her amber eyes met his. And for the first time since he'd seen her chained on that platform, there was something in them other than defiance. Something that looked a lot like hope. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. The town of Willow Creek had never been so divided. Word of the standoff at Triple Creek spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Samuel Hayes had lost his mind, defending a girl who had lived like an outlaw. Others, especially women who had seen enough cruelty from men like the Morrisons, quietly admired Elena's courage. A week later, Judge Cornelius Blackwood called a hearing in the largest barn in town. The place was packed wall-to-wall, ranchers, shopkeepers, drifters, and troublemakers alike. All eager to see the